Good morning. I hope you're as excited as I am about this panel, and especially about the after the fantastic speech that my former colleague and friend John Pullman just delivered. It was very, very inspirational and very informative. Thank you. You know that my name is Christoph Pleitgen, and some of you may know me from days past, either from my time at Thomson Reuters, LiveView, more recently Watch It. I recently changed jobs, and I joined a young company called Crux Intelligence. What do? We are a young startup that looks at the problem of information overload and helps publishers drive engagement by quantifying for their readers and their users how much they know about a given topic. And why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because it is an indication that not just I, but many other practitioners, journalists, commercial managers, technologists, are starting to say that the time is ripe for fundamental change in the sector. So I would advocate, let's stop talking about exactly what the challenges are. I think we all know. Let's start talking about the solutions. And if I could maybe just ask for a bit of water as well. That would be one solution to a very solvable problem. So I'd like to get the discussion started by sharing with you, I went to an event, an industry event in London last week, and a gentleman by the name of Dimitri Shishkin, formerly of BBC, now head of content at a travel startup called Culture Trip. He gave a keynote, and he talked about a three-pronged strategy for travel content companies. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. Travel content companies, but given his experience at the BBC, he felt there was applicability for the news sector as well, and I'd like to share that with you because I thought it was quite insightful. So he talked about three factors. He said, firstly, focused on creativity and original content. Secondly, and I thought this was very interesting, he said consider content and product as one. As one in the sense that creatives or journalists should only be creating content if there is a clearly defined user need. And finally, he advocated for radical embracing of automation. Automation in the sense of freeing up journalists, just like John was talking about, from repetitive tasks that can be better fulfilled by machines, but also from relying on insight gained from the careful analysis of lots and lots of user data to actually help with newsroom decision making. And I'd like to start the discussion by asking my panelists about this. And I'm delighted to be joined here on stage by four outstanding experts in their fields. They're representing a wide array of experience, geographical spread, and also talent. Let me start with Shilei. We had a lively discussion backstage, and we started to talk about some of these things. And I'm interested, when I talk about this culture trip strategy, is that crazy? Is that something where you say, this is interesting? And how would you describe CGTN's strategy when it comes to news storytelling?
First of all, I think CGTN's storytelling, I think we are basically originally storytellers, no matter how new technology changes us. I think the vertical part of that culture trip or travel trip, it would be a very good start point first up. Because I think the travel is the need of the users and audiences. I did my research on Google that I see that they are the most researched keywords of China related with travel. So, but on the other side, I doubt it for the automations, because if everybody goes in this industry goes on for the automations, who will create the original good, valuable content? We need good journalists worldwide. And I think we need flooding of good, valuable, good content onto this world. So I think so that company, I think they start a very good point. And for CGTN, our strategy is based on just mentioned by the think tank. I think one of the my personal understanding of the CGTN think tank or the whole CG strategy is that we try to study the international affairs, study the facts, study the ideas in order to reshape or not reshape, in order to encourage our understanding of the world with not only with the force, but with the rational identity, or I call it global capacity, and AI capacity, whatever capacity we should have, and to understand the world better. So I think for a common goal is that not mentioning about technology or the vertical content startups or CGTN like media industries. We all have one goal is that we share this, we search or seek, pursue the good, common good for the humanity. That's our ultimate goal, I personally think.
Excellent, and let me follow up. John was describing the relationship between technology and human creativity as where one serves the other, where technology provides insight, provides angles, provides ideas. Is that your understanding as well?
I personally doubt it with the technology how far we can go. There are, take AI as it's a very hot topic. Take AI as an example. There are still a lot of unknowns in the AI industry, and how we journalists can rely on, how far we can rely on it, I think it still remains a question. We do have a roadmap that within CGTN's newsroom, and we do integrate with the technology, with the content, with the marketing, with the branding, with everything into one center. But we doubt it. That when you mentioned about the content, about everything, that let's back to the origins of our mission. That I think still the content will value, but the content can be redefined by the technology now. And I think it's not, there's no such thing called a secret to the success or the secret to the solutions. I think it's a processing now. So it's hard to answer your question, sorry.
If I can add something to that, actually.
Of course.
I feel that technology is a service to journalists, and especially to broadcast media. In the end of the day, the content is king. The journalism is the work. The integrity and the diversity of the content that's being gathered on the ground by journalists is what is going to make for the final product, so to speak. And the advancement of technology can help in how we get that information out, how we get those stories out on the field to people's laptops and to their smartphones and to their TV screens. So for me, I see it as if we work in tandem, the reach is much further at a much faster pace.
Mark, maybe next to you, Microsoft News, and Microsoft is, of course, an organization that has an outstanding reputation for technological excellence. Can you talk about how your newsrooms in the Asia region, but also globally, use technology to gain insight and to drive the news production process?
Sure. So I think most of you may know our organization as MSN. More recently, we call ourselves Microsoft News, as you just introduced us. We operate in 140 countries worldwide in 28 languages, and we reach about 500 million users every month. Now, in terms of delivering content to our users, we try to offer a unique mix of human editorial resources coupled with AI and machine learning. We actually have about 800 editors around the world, most of them coming from a journalism background, who actually curate the content that we offer to our users. At the same time, we couple that with AI and try to surface as much personalized content as possible to give the user the best experience. Now, apart from that, as Microsoft News, we also offer AI solutions, a tool for publishers and journalists to actually do more research in the journalism area. We recently announced this service called IDA, IDA, which stands for Insights Discovery Accelerator. It's basically an AI solution that works on Microsoft Azure services. And what it does is it ingests all the data that you may have, maybe past articles from the past 50, 100 years, whatever format it's in. It could be in PDF, it could be in Word, it could be in any kind of format. What IDA does is ingest that. It scans, tags the data, and after that, all you have to do is type in a keyword, and IDA will do the rest. It will find you insights and connections between data points that researchers or journalists can use to actually write new articles based on research that could be done in minutes versus maybe hours that it may have taken before.
Yeah. So some very tangible benefits. One aspect that we heard about before is, of course, the process of verification. We heard about deepfakes at a time where trust in journalism and journalists in many countries, maybe not all, but many certainly, is dwindling, is reduced. How do, and I'm going to ask Shilei and Renee, how do your organization deal with verification? What are the processes, but what is also the workflow? And either of you go first, and then I'm actually also interested to hear from Edward, our expert on VR, to hear whether there are specific issues that relate to VR.
Right. CGTN do have a partnership globally with high-tech companies, both home and abroad. And we find out there is something that we're facing, obstacles we're facing is the trust. That when we have this cooperation with Microsoft and Google, we find that when you come to the database and when you, with artificial intelligence, when you want to really plug it into the arena of media production, it's hard to verify because your data is huge and human editors cannot verify that. But we have methods to verify different sources with the artificial. So we testimony a lot of with different partners. So I think for the newsroom, I'm not from the editor's part. I think you can start with the editor's part and journalist's part. I think from as an organization as a whole, that's why CGTN needs worldwide journalists and to be the original objective source. And I think we have a due caution about high tech. On the one hand, I don't feel that we embrace enough with the high tech. On the other hand, I don't think we should go chasing after every hotspot of the high tech. That's my personal view.
Yeah.
So fake news, misinformation, all of that has been definitely very difficult for us to keep up with in these past few years. I would say that some of the things, obviously, that we as journalists do in order to help us spot this kind of stuff, you have to consider the sources that you're getting your information from. Sometimes websites just write certain headlines. They're known for clickbait. They just want to get you to click on it, and it can be riddled with all sorts of lies. So it's important to read beyond headlines, to actually read full articles or sources of news that you're getting. It's important to know what if you're getting your information from a website, for instance, what that website is. Making sure that sources are not so much less anonymous and more verifiable is always good. Multiple sources is always good. Now, there's also something that people can do as well to spot fake news, which is basically installing a browser extension that identifies stories that could potentially be fake. So that's another way in newsrooms that we kind of are able to identify that. But really, it's about due diligence. And I think the onus is always going to be on the journalist to make sure that the work that they're doing is sourced properly. Yeah. There are other methods as well. Sometimes we'll get a piece of video or some information from somewhere in the world, and we want to be able to verify it. We'll ask them to hold up today's newspaper from the country where they are with the date on it. Or we check weather reports, from that location to see if that's, footage from today or not. So there are different methods that we use, but I think that the onus is more on the journalists.
And is verification everyone's job in the newsroom, or do you have specialists
It's everybody's job as far as we're concerned, yeah.
Great.
Everyone's.
Now to Edward. I'm fascinated by the whole area of VR. Are there examples already of fake news in virtual reality?
Well, regarding 360 and like basically 360 videos you can watch it in VR headsets, it's a very, very nice environment because it allows you to show the full panoramic imagery. So you cannot, it's really hard to fake something. I will explain you why. Because you are not cropping the image. So in case you are going to a war zone or in case you go to a rally, the viewer becomes the correspondent. He can move, I can film everything, but the person is going to decide where he's going to be looking at. So he looks and he has much more emotional attachment to the pieces that he's watching. And he is the guy who's deciding, do I want to go this way? Do I want to look at this way? Do I look to see this thing? Do I want to take a look at the shooting? Do I want to take a look at the civilians? So the person is in charge of the story. He is the correspondent. That's the whole different angle of how you even start filming this stuff. So it's a little bit, regarding the topic, it's a great solution to storytelling because as we discussed, the story is the king. I mean, there's no question about it. So the technology is just helping us to create the new stories, to tell the stories differently, to create the emotional attachment like we did with the stories, for instance, in Palmyra. We filmed it before ISIS blew the historical arc. We filmed the way it was before. Right now, if you go to Palmyra, you won't see anything. There's no architecture. But we filmed in 360 the same it was before. So if you can look at the, if you go to Palmyra, you won't see a thing. But if you can wear the headset, you will see actually how it was like. It's the closest you can get. So this is a very, very new layer to the journalism and to the information.
Yeah. And I'm interested, you've done a great number of stories in VR or 360 already. Are there specific formats that you feel work especially well or where the technology doesn't work so well? What's your experience there?
I would say like people like to go to the places that they, in real life, they cannot go. That's why it was a Space 360 project when we put the camera on ISS space station. It was a huge hit. We had more than 80 million views on Facebook and YouTube because people would like to go to space.
Yeah.
They want to see the Earth from space. And it was very funny because I was chasing like all the cosmonauts and astronauts, like saying like, is it real? How is it real? And they said, oh my God, Ed, we've been like teaching, studying for years, and now you're showing this for free. It was like that reaction. So very close to the real environment. So these stories well very, very nicely. But at the same time, there's an ethical problem. I was approached by the company who was putting the 360 camera on the soldiers in Iraq. And they filmed the guy, the suicide bomber, blowing off. And like, it is something that I would never be able to even myself watch. Because it will get this sort of emotional attachment to, you will be really seeing person dying right in front of you. This is something that the technology is working as a not good, as an evil. You see, it's so you can basically try to tell the story in a good way, in a bad way, or just simply without no comments at all. So this technology can be used as well as for not good things. Like, I'm pretty sure that any terrorist organizations would love to use that in that way.
And it's interesting. Can you talk to us about maybe how during news gathering and news production, how does the creative process differ from conventional news storytelling?
I'm looking basically like the stories that the future generations would like to be a part of. I'm looking more at a different level. Because for me personally, it would be so interesting to see like the first person going in space. I would like to go to the Red Square to see that, like to be part of this crowd. Or like people in Germany would like to see the Berlin Wall collapse, for instance. They would love to feel this atmosphere. So I'm looking at the stories that we're covering, what the future generations would like to take a look at. So I'm trying to film these stories like Palmyra, like Syria. I would like to film more lifestyle stories so people will feel how it was to live in the 21st century, basically.
It's very interesting. And maybe a question to the three other panelists. Have your organizations experimented with VR? I know you have a very impressive standout side.
Legend.
Exactly. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences, if you have any?
Well, at Aljazeera, we don't really use VR on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we have different kinds of graphic technology, 4D imagery, that kind of stuff that we use. But our digital department, which is just a few years old, newly developed department, is experimenting with things like virtual reality and AI technology and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not so much for TV as it is for us, as it is for the digital department. Yeah.
CGTN Digital do have a lot of experiment with the new frontier technologies, not only virtual reality, but also augmented reality and also artificial intelligence, whatever. But I sense two extremes trending in the year to come. One is, I think, is good. The other is, I think, is evil. I think this is a very good occasion to talk about that. One is the immersive experience, or we call that metaverse, coming to being now. I think the Magic Leap is a startup in Florida, and they create this immersive game that allowing people into a virtual reality that at anywhere, anytime, people can share the same experience with each other. That would be change the landscape, not only the media landscape, but also other industries as well. I think that one is good, that because you file the connections with people with diverse culture background. On the other hand, the deepfake that we mentioned, I think in the year to come, it is hard, especially for professionals. We do have an engineer team, and we couldn't figure out whether it is verified, that video. Because I check online, on YouTube, there are top 10 deepfake videos. It's so real, you couldn't figure out it's fake or not. I think that would be a big challenge for us in the year to come, very soon.
Deepfakes have the potential, this can collapse a country.
Right. And then I think that's one of the common challenges for facing by the humankind, that to regulate the AI, I think that would be the feast in the cage, that we need to regulate them. And think for the content industry, when our main editors sitting in a conventional, traditional newsroom, we cannot verify that video. Yeah. That would be a big challenge, I think.
Is the problem potentially so big that it's also grounds for cooperation between different news organizations? Is it an area where people can share information?
I think it definitely lends itself to more content sharing and information sharing because of how dangerous deepfakes are. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mark, does Microsoft News have any experience, any insight as far as virtual reality is concerned?
Not much in virtual reality, unfortunately. But just to add on to what they were just saying, deepfake and fake news is obviously a tough topic to deal with, and it's very challenging. But one thing that we can all do, I think, is work with the right partners. I know user-generated content and content from around the world is very popular, but then again, we have to work with partners that are trustworthy, who are reliable, and that's why at Microsoft News, we work with over 4,500 partners globally, but we do make sure that we try to work with the premium partners in each of the countries that we operate in. Partners such as CGTN would be one of those premium partnerships, and we try to focus on that as much as possible as a measure against fake news and deepfake.
Yeah. Mark, I want to stay with you and talk about a subject which I think is dear to both you and me, and that is measurement. How does Microsoft News deal with audience data? What kind of KPIs are important? And how do these actually get fed back to journalists and inform potentially the creative decision-making process?
Okay. More on the technical side, we do have a platform for experimentation where we actually do a lot of A/B testing. We do always test new features, content, to make sure that we're delivering the best experience possible. And by using this experimental platform, we can actually find out which design or which UI makes most sense for the users. And we feed that back to a product and how we deliver our news. Now, more on an analog type of thinking, we do look at user feedback quite a bit. I personally look at user feedback every day, every morning, for the 11 markets that I oversee. We do get quite a lot of user feedback. And to be honest, about 60% of the user feedback is personal opinion about articles or the amount of advertisement we may have on our page. But about 40% would be actionable feedback that we take quite seriously.
And Shilei, for your newsroom, you as someone who also runs a digital news operation, I suspect that you get quite a bit of user feedback as well. Is that the case?
Right. We do not have on our website and apps. We are in the process in the upgrade our apps and also because we are very young. We just launched our website in 3 years' time. But we do have we have over 90% of the unique users from worldwide. And we do have these shares and most shared and most favored contents. But we're now building our user system now. So I will have the comment, I think, in the year to come. But we do have 120 million followers worldwide with our social media platforms. So we got every feedback every day from different, with our partners on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and also Weibo and WeChat. It varies from their personal views and to their comments on the articles we're launching out. But basically, my experience that the top stories that people on the social media favor is so much different from when I was doing the news on the television. And they favor on positive news. And top 10 of the feeds, no matter it's video or text-based stories, they favor those who can help people themselves enjoy life. That's so different from the news.
Brilliant. We could still talk for hours, I feel. But there's not a lot of time left. So maybe as a final question, I'd like to ask each of you. We talked about different technologies. We talked about challenges. Let's talk about implementation. How do you decide between all these technological trends, and how do you convince people in the newsroom what is important and what is maybe less important, and how do you actually drive change? Maybe I'll start with you, Edward.
Well, it's easy for me because I use the technology all the time, and from my perspective, you cannot basically beat the technology. It's going up with you or without you. It will develop. So you need to figure it out and just try to use it as best as you could.
Brilliant. And Mark, what's your advice?
Well, I would say, well, first of all, Microsoft, we obviously use a lot of technology in our services. But at the same time, too much reliance on technology is a little bit dangerous. And that's why we believe that we do have to have a mixture of human editorial resources coupled with AI and machine learning. So the mixture, I think, is important. The human touch is very important.
Very much echoing what we heard during the keynote as well. And how about you, Renee?
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think the synergy between platforms is very important. I try to drive home to the people at Aljazeera that always remember your content is what should shine, and everything else comes after that. And different platforms will then cater the content for distribution on those sites.
Thank you so much. And
So I will conclude in 3 keywords. One is have fun, and the other is collaborative and being open. So if you want to implement any new technology in your newsroom, you actually, for the content provider ourselves, and you need to find inner value. You need to have fun with your creation of the value first. Otherwise, you lose your users and you lose your audiences. And I want to add more, since this is CGTN forum, and in the China water, that I think welcome all of you that be partner of CGTN, and we have this global cooperation and face to the common challenges that we are facing in the near future.
And that's a brilliant final statement. Dear audience, I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as we did here on stage. Thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the event and enjoy lunch.
Thank you, Mr. Pleitgen and all the other panelists. Thank you very much.